Welcome back to the Redacted Archives. I'm your host, and tonight we're opening case file 068. The audio log you're about to hear was recovered from the personal effects of a mail carrier named Marcus Webb. He disappeared in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina in the autumn of 1987. We found his journal wedged beneath a railroad tie, about 3 miles from any documented rail line. The pages were damp, the ink was smeared, but the words, well, the words were still readable, and they were still terrified. Now, before I tell you what Marcus found, I want to give you something, a glimpse, a little moment of where his mind had gone by the time he was writing these things down. Listen close now. They're still moving, you see. Still moving through the mountain. And they're always looking for the mail. They're always looking for someone who can carry the mail. Now then, let me take you back to where Marcus's story truly begins. Marcus Webb had been delivering mail in those mountains for nearly 8 years by the time of our interest. He knew those roads better than he knew his own neighborhood, better than he knew his own house, some might say. His wife left him in '85, took their daughter with her, and after that, well, the mountains became his companion. That's what Marcus wrote. The mountains became his companion. And companions, he said, sometimes become something else entirely. The morning in question was the 17th of October. Marcus was making his usual route, heading northeast from the small town of Asheville, up through the winding passages of the Appalachian Range. The autumn had come early that year. The leaves were already the color of dried blood and rust. The chill in the air was unnatural, biting deeper than it should have for the season. He noticed, as he drove his little postal truck up a particularly narrow road, that he'd come to a place he didn't recognize. Now, Marcus knew every road. He knew every mailbox on every property. But this road seemed to exist in a fold between other roads. It shouldn't have been there at all. He wrote, "The trees seemed to lean inward, as if the forest itself was watching me pass." The road deteriorated rapidly. The asphalt gave way to gravel, and then the gravel gave way to dirt and decomposing leaves. And in the dirt, barely visible beneath the accumulated debris and moss, Marcus saw them. Railroad tracks. Rusted. Old. Impossibly old. They ran parallel to the road, disappearing into the fog that clung to the mountainside like something living, like something breathing, like something with hunger. Marcus stopped the truck. He should have turned around. He knew even then that some part of him knew he should turn around. But instead he got out. He followed the tracks. They led him to a place that should not have existed. The station was Victorian in design, Genuinely Victorian, the kind you see in photographs from the 1880s. The wood was painted deep burgundy, though the paint was peeling away in long, thin strips. There was a covered platform, a ticket window boarded up, and above the entrance, in letters so faded they were barely visible, a name, Ravencrest Station. Marcus had delivered mail for 8 years in those mountains. There was no Ravencrest Station. There had never been a Ravencrest Station. Not on any map, not in any directory, not in any of the historical records that were housed in the little museum in Asheville. Yet there it stood. The fog was thicker here, seeming to emerge from beneath the ground itself. It smelled of wet coal and ozone. That's the exact phrase Marcus used. Wet coal and ozone. A smell like a lightning strike mixed with the deep, damp smell of something that had been underground for a very long time. He approached the station. The door was unlocked. The hinges made no sound when he opened it. Inside, the air was even colder. The fog had followed him in, or perhaps it had always been inside, suspended in the dead, stale atmosphere like a secret kept by the station itself. And there, on the wall of the ticketmaster's office, was a clock. The clock was enormous, a thing of Victorian craftsmanship. Its face was cream-colored, with numbers in a style that was definitely not modern, not from this century or the last. The hands were brass, ornate, moving with mechanical precision. The hands were moving, but they were moving backward. Marcus watched it for what he said felt like hours. He couldn't say for certain. Time felt strange in that place, elongated, stretched like taffy. The clock's hands moved backward steadily, slowly, the way a normal clock would move forward, inexorable and patient. And the ticking sound it made, that relentless rhythm, sounded like something was counting down. Something was measuring something out, but in reverse. Something was counting toward an end that had already happened. The waiting room of the station was divided into several wooden benches. Each bench faced toward the interior, toward where the train tracks would emerge from the fog outside. And sitting on each bench, positioned with terrible precision, were figures. Passengers. They were not human, though they had been given the human shape. They were made, Marcus wrote, of corn husks and river mud. The husks had been woven into something approximating a body. The mud had been packed into the woven structure, hardening and cracking with age. Their clothing was made of the same material, or perhaps it had rotted into the same material. It was difficult to tell where the body ended and the garment began. But the worst part was their faces. They had no eyes, Where eyes should have been, there was simply dried husk, puckered and collapsed inward. The mouths were voids, empty spaces where you might imagine a mouth should be. Some of them had what might have been hair, but it was the color and texture of dead grass. And they were arranged, each one, in the exact same posture, sitting forward slightly, hands resting on their laps, their heads tilted at the same angle, as if they were all listening to something that Marcus could not hear. But of course he could hear it. He could hear it, and that was the thing that terrified him most. It was a whispering, soft, like wind through cracks in a house, like people talking in an adjacent room, their words too indistinct to make out. But it was coming from them, from the figures, from the husk and mud passengers that were waiting with impossible patience for a train that may or may not come. They were waiting, Marcus wrote, waiting for something, waiting for someone. And they were waiting in a place that existed between what is and what isn't. Marcus should have run. Every instinct told him to. But he was a mail carrier. He had a purpose. On a small stand beside the ticket window was a mail slot. It was brass, gleaming despite the darkness and the fog. Above it, in neat printed letters, "To the carrier, from the mountain." Inside was an envelope, addressed to him, Marcus Webb by name, in handwriting that was not human, but made to look as if it could be. The letters were too perfect, too deliberate. Marcus withdrew it with shaking hands. The paper felt warm, very warm, like something living had just been holding it, he wrote. That detail he wrote down many times. He opened it. Inside was a blank sheet, but as he looked at it, words began to appear, not written, appearing, emerging, as if revealed by something invisible, or as if the paper had always contained them, and his eyes were only now learning to see them. The message was simple, but its simplicity was terrifying. Keep the mountain beating. When Marcus looked up from the letter, the station was no longer empty. Where there had been fog, there was now clarity. Where there had been silence broken only by whispers, there was now the distinct, undeniable sound of an approaching train. It came through the fog slowly, carefully, as if the fog itself was resisting its passage. The engine was black, ornate, festooned with decorative metalwork that seemed to shift and move when Marcus wasn't looking directly at it. And in the windows he could see them. Not the husks on the benches, Other figures, sitting in the cars, looking out at the platform with those empty, sunken faces. The train stopped. The doors opened with a sound like a sigh. The husks began to move, short, jerking motions, as if remembering how to move, or being moved by something else. They filed past Marcus without acknowledgement. None touched him, but as they passed, he felt a coldness, not temperature, but something deeper, a coldness that drained something essential. When the last had boarded, the train whistle sounded. The same whistle from the beginning, he realized. How long ago? Minutes? Hours? He couldn't say. The train began to move. Not forward, but downward, into the ground. The track softened, and the train descended as if sinking. The fog rose to meet it, obscuring it. Within moments, it was gone. The station was empty. The clock still ticked backward. Marcus ran, back through the fog, back to the tracks, back to the forest. His truck was where he'd left it, though he had no sense of elapsed time. His watch had stopped. All his clocks had stopped. When he got home and checked the television, only 15 minutes had passed from when he'd left the main road until he'd returned. 15 minutes. Over the following weeks, Marcus tried to find Ravencrest Station again. He retraced his route dozens of times. He walked every inch of those mountains, looking for the rusted tracks, the Victorian building, the fog that smelled of wet coal and ozone. But it was gone, if it had ever been there at all. The envelope, however, remained. Marcus kept it in his desk. The blank page was still blank, but he understood its message. Keep the mountain beating. Keep the mountain beating. In his journal, Marcus began to document strange things. Local news items about missing persons. Mail arriving with no return address, yet delivered correctly. Boxes left by roadsides containing nothing but dried grass and the faint smell of mud. And he noticed the husks. Simple versions, crude effigies of corn and river mud, positioned in the forest facing various directions, some fresh, some ancient, weathered until barely recognizable as ever having been shaped human. They all faced inward, toward the center of the mountains. Marcus's last entry is dated November 3rd. The handwriting is shakier, as if his hands betrayed him, or he was becoming something that didn't remember how to write human. He wrote, "I understand now. The station isn't a place, it's a mechanism, a way. The mountain has a heartbeat, and the station is the valve, where something moves in and out. The things in the mountain need to travel. They need to be conveyed. They need someone to carry the mail between worlds. Someone reliable. Someone trustworthy. I didn't understand the message at first. Keep the mountain beating. But now I know. I have to keep delivering. Keep moving. If I stop, the mountain will know. It will send someone else. Always send someone else until it finds what it needs. I saw the train again today, not in the station, on a normal road, moving through fog. The clock is ticking backward in my mind now. I feel it. All moments not lived yet, counting down. I'm going back to the station. I think I'm supposed to board this time. My delivery is complete. That was the last entry. Marcus disappeared 3 days later. His postal truck was found at the end of a road that may or may not still exist. His body was never found. But in the weeks and months that followed, the postmaster reported something curious. Mail continued arriving from Marcus's roots, stamped with current dates, properly sorted, delivered without fail. No one discovered who was delivering it. And in the mountains of North Carolina, if you know the right roads, or roads that shouldn't exist, you might find them. The husks, made of corn and river mud, positioned in the forest, facing inward, waiting, listening, counting down on a clock that moves backward, waiting for the next mail carrier, waiting for someone to keep the mountain beating. And somewhere in the fog, in the space between real and unreal, a train continues its journey. The passengers sit perfectly still, no eyes, but always watching, always waiting for the mail, always waiting for the one who will come, someone to keep the mountain beating. The clock keeps ticking backward, counting down, or perhaps counting up to something that hasn't happened yet. If you've heard something on those roads, if you've seen the tracks, the redacted archives wants to know. Leave a comment. Tell us what you found. Subscribe so you don't miss the next case, because the mountain is always listening.